As the investigators sought out new witnesses, they found themselves under constant threat.
Gary was threatened several times. His vehicles were tampered with. I would think whoever tampered with them, it was a scare tactic because it was so obvious that they were being tampered with.
Gary it was one piece of evidence I know he got that he even said he got one step ahead of him this time. He told us about this book. It was like addresses, telephone numbers, names. He said if they knew he had it, they'd kill him.
On July the 11th, 1990, Gary Caradori and his 8-year-old son AJ were flying home from Chicago in his light aircraft. They had watched the All-Star baseball game, and Caradori had been pursuing new leads.
Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board are in Harold Cameron's cornfield trying to determine what caused this private plane to crash, killing its 2 occupants.
The bodies of Gary Caradori and 8-year-old AJ were found in the wreckage.
National Transportation Safety Board investigators say wreckage from the crash is apparently strewn over a 3/4 to 1 mile long stretch in this field.
The fact that the wreckage is scattered over a large area certainly demonstrates that it did break up in flight. The exact mechanism of breakup yet is still unknown.
The federal investigation was never able to discover what tore the plane apart.
There are things missing from the plane. His briefcase is missing. I think the plane was sabotaged. There's no doubt in my mind.
Within 24 hours of the tragedy, all Caradori's records were impounded by the FBI. Gary's widow, Sandy, is still unable to come to terms with her loss.
As a mother, I don't want to ever think that somebody murdered my child, let alone my husband. But I think if you'd ever talk to any parent, be it mother or father, who's ever lost a child, I mean, the worst thing that you can think of is that somebody would want to murder a child.
I really feel that somebody killed my brother. And inside me, I know that somebody killed my brother. If somebody could help us out somewhere, somebody knows something. And may God help those who did that to him and his family.
The effect of Gary's crash on the investigation, I think, in effect, put an end to anybody else coming forward. There are many victims. We knew of more. There are more. They're still out there. They're afraid to come forward.
That's when I was finished, because I figured out if they murdered Gary and his son, there was nothing that would stop them. There was no piece of paper. There was nothing we could come up with that was going to get anything done.
But Gary Caradori's death pricked Troy Bonner's conscience. He promised Sandy that he would tell Senator Schmidt's committee about the FBI's pressure which led him to lie.
I set the record straight. I was, going to do it. And would, the truth would come out, and somebody would be held accountable for his death. And then at the funeral I had seen, FBI guys, and they looked at me. I was supposed to meet Senator Labetz and Schmidt for lunch after the funeral. And, that's when I decided, I told my mom, we're not going to do the lunch. We're going to hightail it out of Lincoln now.
Troy Bonner claims that pressure from the FBI and with the assistance of the county attorney's office in Omaha led him to swear a new statement claiming that he and Alicia Owen had concocted the entire child abuse story. He told this story to the grand jury formed to bring any charges. On July the 23rd, 1990, the grand jury issued a bizarre and contradictory report. It indicted Larry King for fraud and embezzlement and ruled that he had paid young men for sex, but dismissed allegations about his sex ring. It indicted Alan Baer for the serious offense of pandering for sex, but rejected evidence linking him to King or to Citron, whom it noted had been convicted of separate child molestation charges. It accepted that Troy, Alicia, and Paul Bonassi had been abused, but not by the people they identified, and for refusing to withdraw her evidence, it charged Alicia Owen with perjury. Lawrence Schmidt's legislative committee issued a report denouncing the grand jury. Schmidt acknowledges that the system failed both the victims and him.
I had, I think, as distinguished a record as anyone could put together in 24 years. I was told that would be curtailed, and it was. I was told I'd have financial problems, and I did. The message was not lost on most politicians in Nebraska. I think the message that was delivered was, if any legislative committee ever tries to conduct a thorough investigation again, the same thing will happen. It has shaken my faith in the institutions of government. I used to be a firm believer that the system would work, and that people who did things wrong would be punished. And we discovered victims who claimed to have been abused and who the grand jury acknowledged had been abused. But they did not try to find out who had abused those individuals. Instead, they convicted Alicia Owen of perjury. Indefensible from my point of view.
The trial took place in July 1991. Troy Bonner testified that the child abuse story had been an invention. As a result, Alicia Owen was sentenced to between 9 and 25 years in prison.
I can't find a case in the history of this country where some kid got sentenced to 25 or 30 years in prison for something like this. If you were going to pick a what I call a telesign, something that says something's fishy about the whole thing, it was in the sentencing itself. For some reason, they had to send a signal to every kid who was a potential witness. My opinion again. A signal so loud and clear, if you dare to come forward, if you dare to talk, watch what happens.
Alan Baer was fined $500 after pleading no contest to a reduced charge of aiding and abetting prostitution. Peter Citron served 2 years of a 3 to 8 year sentence. Thanks to Troy Bonner's lies, Larry King never faced child sex charges. For the $40 million fraud, he was given a 15-year sentence, 10 years less than Alicia Owen.
I feel really sick. I should be taken out and shot for doing that. And if that was to happen, I would go willingly.
John DeCamp, former state senator and Vietnam veteran, is now the only man fighting to help Larry King's victims. He is the lawyer trying to overturn Alicia Owen's conviction and to expose the cover-up.
I live in Nebraska. Hell, I was born here, raised here. I have 4 kids growing up here. Like it or not, it's my heritage, you know? Well, if it's a dirty cesspool that I got to live in or look back on that I left, that ain't good. The real cost, if I were going to say to my family, has been the fear and intimidation it's put in some of the kids. A couple of the kids are really, really frightened and really had some sleeping problems over, you know, hear this or that. So that's been the real concern I've had.
John has received anonymous threats and has turned for advice to his friend and one-time boss, former head of the CIA, William Colby.
Old Bill Colby told me better than anything. The one thing the bad people can't afford is publicity, and knocking you off right now or doing something obvious to one of your kids would bring him more trouble than it's worth.
I said, you have to consider the possibility of some danger to not only your reputation, but to your person. I mean, people do react rather violently to some kinds of charges, or particularly if they're true, there's more apt to be